Hello, my name is Damian Graham. I'm the Communications Director for the City of Raleigh. We are here today to talk about how the city is preparing for Hurricane Florence. I've got a lot of folks up here with me this afternoon, so I want to introduce them to you right now. We have Mayor Nancy McFarland, City Manager Ruffin Hall, City Council Member Steph Mendel, City Council Member David Cox, City Council Member Kay Crowder, Police Chief Cassandra Deck Brown, Fire Chief John McGrath, Emergency Management Manager Derek Remmer, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Director Diane Sauer, Transportation Director Michael Moore, Emergency Communications Director Dominic Nutter, Information Technology Director Darnell Smith, Solid Waste Services Director Stan Joseph, Development Services Director Tom Hosey, Engineering Services Assistant Director Blair Hinkle, and Engineering Services Director Rich Kelly. Today, first, we're going to hear from the mayor. She's going to share a few comments, followed by our city manager, Ruffin Hall. We'll also share some comments, and then we'll take your questions. So first, Mayor.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. There are moments in each of our lives that stand out, that we remember forever. For me, one of those moments was when Hurricane Fran hit Raleigh. Hurricane Florence will be one of those moments for us. Hurricane Fran hit 22 years ago. Raleigh has doubled in size since that hurricane hit, which means half of our population was not here to experience that. I know that some of us have been looking at the newest map, and it looks like it has shifted south, and they think, well, that we're okay, but it can shift again. The night that Hurricane Fran hit, most of the city lost power around 10 p.m. And the last thing that we heard that night was that it was going to come into Greensboro. Well, it shifted, and it hit Raleigh instead. And we didn't know that because without power, we were unable to get information. I clearly remember sleeping in the basement with my children and feeling the ground shake throughout the night. The next morning, when I went outside, I realized the trees had been ripped out of the ground by tornadoes, and that sound was the sound of the trees crashing into the ground. I also clearly remember the smell of gas and yellow jackets everywhere because the gas lines had been knocked off of the homes, and as the trees were ripped out of the ground, the yellow jacket nests were disturbed. But most of all, I remember the sense of community. Everyone came out of their homes. We all checked on each other. People that had chainsaws helped those that did not. People that had gas stoves helped to cook. We all got out our grills and cooked the food that was getting ready to go bad because our refrigerators weren't working. This is who we are. This is Raleigh. Our city staff and first responders will be taking care of the direst needs first, so I'm asking us all to please, first of all, be safe. Don't put yourself at risk in a dangerous situation, but do be mindful of those around you, the elderly neighbor that lives alone, or the family that needs a meal, or maybe just some water. Most of all, we will need each other. The storm itself will last a couple of days, but the recovery has the potential to last for weeks. We will get through it together. I've seen it happen before, and I know that we can do it again, because this is the kind of community that we are. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruffin Hall, and it's my pleasure to serve as Raleigh City Manager. There's several things I'm going to do today to talk about this particular event. Before I begin, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge and appreciate the support from the mayor and council for what they do every single day to support our organization as we prepare for this particular event. Thank you very much. The second thing I wanted to do is acknowledge the various folks that are here behind us that are demonstrating support. We have a tremendous amount of talent in the city of Raleigh, and not only are the folks behind us here ready to serve, but all of our employees are ready to serve during this particular crisis. I wanted to do several things as we work through preparations for this event. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the capacity of our staff and what we're doing for preparations. Secondly, I'd like to set some expectations, what we see heading into this event. Third, we'll talk about communications, ways that we can interact with our citizens of Raleigh. And fourth, a little bit about what we see happening next. So first, staff capabilities and preparations. Throughout this event, safety is our #1 priority. And not only the safety of our citizens, but the safety of all of our responders and folks that are out there. That's our #1 priority throughout this event. The city of Raleigh is ready for this storm. We prepare for events all the time. We have skills, we have training, we have experience, we have equipment. We do scenario planning for these types of events, and we handle all kinds of events during the year that are special events or other things, so we know how to work together and are well prepared for this event. I have challenged each and every one of our employees and our organization to figure out ways how they can help in this particular situation, even if it's not outside their normal course of business. I also wanted to take a moment to thank all of our city staff, as well as all the public service agencies that are out there. While the event is going on, our folks are asked to do incredible things while their families also try to manage. They make tremendous sacrifices in these moments. And so I just wanted to personally say how much I appreciate their work during this event. I'm proud of our staff, and we are ready to go. So a few things in terms of specific preparations. There's lots of detail. I'm not going to go through all that. I just wanted to hit a few highlights. For an event like this, regardless of what the track says, there are two major elements that we have to try to manage. One of those is wind damage and the associated trees, and the second is flooding. It isn't just about responding to the specific emergency event at the time. So for example, wind damage. What are we doing to prepare for that? We have a recovery plan in place that we are preparing for right now. One of those steps is damage assessment. We're getting a plan together to go out and be prepared to evaluate the damage the moment the specific weather incident is over. We're working with Duke Energy and our other partners to try to address any downed power lines and trees and the relationship there so we can get help Duke Energy get power on as quickly as possible. We are working and have a debris removal plan that we are working on right now in its preparations to get not only the wood debris that may be brought out to the curb that we have to deal with, but any construction or other solid waste that may occur. We are doing the recovery planning now before the event actually begins. For flooding issues is likely to be an even more significant issue in this particular event. So rather than actually paying attention to the storm track, if you look on the screen behind me, you can see what some of the projected rainfalls may look like. That's a significant portion of this event. It's not just about the wind. We have a variety of emergency response actions ready to go. The City of Raleigh has 3 swift water rescue teams with 2 additional backup teams in support of those groups. They do training all the time. As a matter of fact, they were doing training last month. So we have the right teams for the emergency response. In that category, I'd like to remind folks, and the various media folks have been reporting this, please do not drive through standing water. Every single time we have to try to respond to a rescue situation for folks driving through a water situation, it's resources that could not go somewhere else. So we need folks' help with that. Also regarding flooding, we're lowering lake levels in a variety of our lake situations, Lake Benson, Lake Wheeler, Lake Johnson, and Wake Forest Reservoir. By lowering those lake levels, we're trying to generate capacity to absorb the rainfall. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but that's our current effort to try to prepare for the enormous amount of rain. We're also reaching out to all of the citizens that are in the low-lying floodplain areas to give them extra notification for what might be coming. We're doing that through our reverse 911 system. That means we have technology now that can send a call to your phone, giving you notification about what situation you may have. And if that doesn't work, we're going to put door flyers, door hangers on each person's door that's in a low-lying area. Now, that does not mean that if you don't get notified, you may not have a specific threat, but our goal here is to try to notify those that have been in the past, the most flood prone in advance of the storm. Finally, we have our Emergency Operations Center, which is going to be activated tomorrow with about 50 or 60 staff and the various city departments, city agencies, and other public agencies that will be open around the clock, 24 hours a day, through the duration of the event. So those are some of our specific preparations. So now I'd like to go, secondly, to some of the expectations for what this event really can look like. One thing I would just like to mention from my experience working with these particular events, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So the citizens of Raleigh may have experienced these storms in the past. There's a real potential for significant damage from this event that will last more than a few days. The impacts can last for more than a few days. Any folks who remember the impacts from Hurricane Fran, as the mayor mentioned, it wasn't over. After the storm receded and the floodwaters came down, there was a lot of damage and a lot of debris that had to be picked up over an extended period of time. Our preparation efforts have remained unchanged. Regardless of what the track looks like, the projection, we are going to continue to prepare that no matter where the storm may be projected to go. When it's all over and every last single piece of debris is picked up is when this particular event, it will be over for us. So as a part of the expectations, we're going to need folks to help us. If this ends up being a significant event, we are going to have way more demands for service than we have resources to respond. So part of the appeal here is for people to help each other. Look to your neighbors, look to each other, be self-sufficient. We will get to the issues as quickly as we can, but the event will likely be larger than we could absorb under a normal set of circumstances. So we're asking for your help. Our goal is to put this city back on its feet as quickly as possible, and I know that every single employee that works for the city of Raleigh is dedicated and ready to do that. Third, communications. How are we going to communicate? How are we going to share information during this particular event? Communications is everything. First of all, we obviously have our City of Raleigh website in a hurricane section. So City of Raleigh's website, www.raleighNC.gov. Raleigh NC, one word. Again, www.raleighNC.gov, and there'll be a hurricane section on the website. We are also going to activate a non-emergency call center phone number tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. so that we can consolidate calls and questions and concerns from our citizens in one particular location. I'm going to give you that number, although it's not going to be activated until tomorrow morning. That number is 919-996-2999. So again, 919-996-2999. Folks can call that number to report trees that are maybe down, blocking the right-of-way or the road, traffic signals that may be out, street flooding blocking a street. By calling that number, we'll take that information into our database, we'll feed it to our Emergency Operations Center, and then we can map where those locations are and push that information back out to the people that are in the community. If that makes sense. So again, 919-996-2999 beginning at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Let me be very clear. If you have an emergency, if you have a life-threatening situation, please call 911. That phone number is not to suggest that you're not supposed to call 911. That's really a supplemental call location to report things so we can track the data and free up our 911 center for true emergency calls. But if you're in any doubt, call 911. We also have our Twitter accounts and Facebook, which will also be constantly pushing out information. So finally, let me wrap up. What are we looking at? What's going to be happening next? We're going to be continuing to push out information. We're going to continue our preparations, regardless of what the track says, until this is over. And we're going to ask for the community help. From my experience in these particular situations, Folks are pretty good for about the first 3 or 4 days. If you hit day 4 and you haven't had a shower, you haven't had a hot meal, and you haven't slept well because you don't have any air conditioning, people get frustrated with one another. Okay? If we're in that situation, we're going to be doing everything we can as the city to try to mitigate those conditions in our neighborhoods and our community. But we're also going to need everyone else's help to try to accommodate that. Let me conclude again by recognition of the support we have from our mayor and council, the support we have from the leadership of the city of Raleigh, and from all of our employees, not only from the city of Raleigh's perspective, but all our public agencies. I just want to take a moment to say thank you for their service, and we stand ready to manage this particular event. So with that, I think we're ready to move to questions.
Yep. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ruffin. We'll start off with questions. Anna.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the preparation, but I'm wondering what residents should or shouldn't be doing during the storm and in the immediate aftermath, if there's the most important thing or something you'd like to emphasize.
Well, I think there's a lot of preparation materials that are on the various media sites that have already gone out there, so I don't want to try to list what's already been described. My main message at this point, and I think this is true for all of our emergency responders, is to complete your preparations and sit still and protect yourself through the event. So again, if there's wind, we may have wind damage, we may have flooding threats or whatever. People moving around during that event is our biggest problem, okay? Folks need to make their preparations and then sit still through the event.
Yes.
Hi, Sloan Heffernan, WRAL News. Thanks for being here. And I have 2 water-based questions. Number 1, we'd like to know about Crabtree Creek and any steps being taken to mitigate issues in that area that is prone to flooding. And number 2, people have been stockpiling water. What is the threat to the water system? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Let's do the water system first. So the city of Raleigh has 2 water plants, and those water plants have backup generator power. So under normal conditions, we should not lose power, and therefore, if you're on the city of Raleigh's public utility system, you should not lose any water-related service. Now, there's always circumstances that we can't predict that may potentially impact that. For example, if we were to lose power at one of our water treatment plants or it would be compromised by flooding, there's a potential that we wouldn't be able to fully have a water service, but that is very unlikely. So the water discussion, at least through the media, really should be more focused on folks that are not on the city of Raleigh's water system, because they may be on wells, so then when they lose power, they don't have access to water. On the Crabtree Creek situation, we have monitors as to know exactly what kind of storm situation we may have. Crabtree Creek is in a location now that's been flooding under normal conditions, so we're going to receive a lot of water in that situation. And at this point, there's not much more we can do other than monitor and notify what may be coming.
Yes, sir.
Either, I'm with Univision, Antonio, Univision, local. Either the governor is overreacting and being pessimistic and calling this event catastrophic, and every expert is calling this a catastrophic event. Thousands of people can die. Or you guys, including you and the mayor, are very calm, very, about this, and probably you think that this is not going to be a very catastrophic event, as Governor Cooper is saying. If residents of this town listen this morning to the governor, and then listen to you right now, they're completely different scenarios. Which one are you really calm and because you have everything under control, or is he overreacting to something that is called one of the biggest events and a catastrophic level event?
So I will just simply speak for the city of Raleigh. So I happened to be in the city of Wilmington on the ground in 1996 for Hurricane Fran. Hurricane Fran was a Category 3 storm when it made landfall, and it was devastating. not only to the city of Wilmington, but to all the various communities, including Raleigh, that was impacted. I think that this is a very, very serious threat. This is a serious storm that we are all taking with the challenges that are in front of us. Some of the projections at this point are at Category 4. If you put that in context, if it were to remain a Category 4 and make landfall, it would be the most significant hurricane event to hit North Carolina since Hurricane Hazel in 1954. So I think it is fair to say that often we get focused on these storm tracks, these projections about where they're going to go. And the reality is that no hurricane has actually hit in the location that it was projected that I'm aware of, having done this for 23 years. So the message should be, take this seriously, make preparations. We are concerned, but we are also ready for the challenges that are ahead.
Over here.
So it's not a catastrophic event.
Hi, I'm Amy Elliott with Spectrum News. I know that there have been some announcements about shelters throughout the county so far. What do we know so far about other shelters that are going to be opening in Raleigh, or do we know yet?
So Wake County Emergency Management is handling the opening of shelters. The City of Raleigh doesn't operate the shelters, and we have a really very strong, very effective partnership with Wake County Emergency Management on the shelters, and so they are making those announcements. They are opening shelters not only to manage the evacuees that are coming from the coast, but also to help manage and prepare for our own folks. I don't have the specific list right off the top of my head. I think that Wake County Emergency Management can give you the most latest and up-to-date information for that. We support the shelter operations if they need any assistance because we have a joint arrangement, but Wake County takes the lead.
There we go. Elena from ABC 11. Are there any fears or perhaps preparations of folks who live in certain communities, low-lying areas, that they would have to be evacuated from their homes? I know you mentioned Crabtree Creek. That sits right by the mall. People inevitably will park down there. But homes-wise, is that a fear you have right now?
So we have preparations, if needed, for evacuations for folks in low-lying areas. And many of those particular folks are always in that particular, they are familiar with flooding in those areas that occur on a regular basis. So for us, we are prepared to manage that in conjunction with state emergency management because oftentimes it involves the relationship with the Corps of Engineers and other areas. We are preparing for evacuations and notifications if needed in the low-lying areas.
Michael Hyland from CBS 17. Had a couple questions related to emergency response. Was wondering first if anybody could speak to any staffing changes that have been made during the storm itself.
So we are definitely staffing for our full event. We've brought in some additional staffing as needed to backfill, but in all of our emergency responders, whether that's police and fire. Those folks have existing structures in place. Both the police chief and the fire chief could certainly speak in great detail about how they manage that. But we do bring in a different staffing model when we are facing a significant event. So they are staffed up and ready to go.
And is there a point during the storm where emergency responders do not go out because it is so unsafe for them based on the weather conditions?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. So not only emergency responders, but for example, our transit system, our buses, we generally have a standard at about 35 miles an hour sustained winds. We cease operations. For the fire department, and Chief McGrath can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe at 50 miles an hour, we are going to suspend operations on a general basis. Obviously, there is some judgment there that the fire department and the police department make in terms of evaluating the threat versus the protection of our own employees and their equipment that they need to make. But generally speaking, at least for the fire department, because the trucks, they're big trucks, 50 miles an hour, we generally suspend operations. Let me just simply say we will do everything we can, regardless of the situation, to help protect lives and property, and that involves judgment that they know how to make. But when the conditions get severe enough, we will protect our equipment and our employees as well.
Any other questions? Anna?
You mentioned notifying the people in the low-lying areas. Roughly how many people is that, and what exactly are you telling them? Is it seek higher ground, just be aware?
So Blair Hinkle with Engineering Services, I'm going to ask you to help me with that particular question.
Sure. So we are in the process of reaching out to more than 26,000 people currently, and the message is just that if you live in a low-lying area, seek higher ground, particularly prior to the storm hitting.
But not in a mandatory evacuation? Or
That's correct.
Right.
There's a lot of construction going on. We were just downtown, and some of the workers were taking down their equipment. Is there any communication from the city with these construction groups? What's being done to make sure that none of these items become projectiles during the storm?
Yes, we do reach out, particularly informally, because we have relationships with our development services folks and our inspectors and those types of folks. Usually they're pretty well on top of how to secure those sites, because we want to make sure that those don't become obstacles or threats during the event. So we do reach out on an informal basis.
Last questions? No?
Maybe last thoughts from the mayor herself?
I think that the I think the manager subbed it up very well. Really, our priority is safety during the event, and certainly safety after the event too. But we have a great staff. I have great confidence in everyone, but I also have great confidence in this community to be able to pull together and help each other and see us through this. So thank you very much.
All right, so as the mayor and as the manager said, please check our website, raleighnc.gov, as well as follow us on social media. We'll be providing updates as they are available, and depending on how this event plays out, we may have another press conference in the coming days. Thank you very much.